who lives in a pineapple under the sea. If you guessed SpongeBob, congratulations, you got it right. He's a little yellow square sponge who, might I add, is extremely fragile, owing to being made of sponge. So how come when he has to fight an army of evil robots, he can take such a beating? I felt like playing the game the way I imagined things would turn out for a little yellow friend. Can you beat SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom without taking any damage? There's only one rule for this challenge: I can't take damage. Thankfully, this game has a really good autosave feature. Anytime I collect a golden spatula, one of Patrick's missing socks, or run by a checkpoint sign, it saves. If I take damage, I load that save. Easy as pie. So let's get started. The game begins with Plankton making an army of robots, then immediately losing control of them. On the other side, we have SpongeBob and Patrick playing robots and racehorses. They decide to use the mystical magic wishing shell to wish the robots to life. Come the next day, robots are there, and SpongeBob thinks it's his fault. Here's where we start. I take my time in SpongeBob's house, going from room to room and looting everything that isn't nailed down. I also made sure to collect Patrick's lost sock in the comic book room. With 10 of these socks, Patrick would award me a golden spatula, and these are used to unlock new areas of the game, and it just so happens I need 75 of them to confront the final boss and beat it. I found one in the closet, so without further ado, I left SpongeBob's house and made my way around to what little of Bikini Bottom I could to get more spatulas. I made sure to grab the one on top of SpongeBob's house, which also led to me picking up a pair of golden underwear. Notice how I am now conveniently missing a pair of underwear. This represents my health bar. Note that I didn't actually take any damage. The golden underwear increases your max HP, but doesn't fill it. So I went back to SpongeBob's house, picked up a fresh pair, then headed for Squidward's. He rewarded me for jumping around like a maniac and breaking all of his stuff with a golden spatula and a sock. Then I did the same in Patrick's house for another sock. Okay, enough fooling around, time to actually start the challenge. First up, Jellyfish Fields. Squidward gets stung by jellyfish, and SpongeBob promises to collect him some King Jellyfish jelly for him to rub all over himself. Here we encounter the first robots of the game that we can actually fight. Of course, since this is the first real level of the game, we don't have much trouble with them. Time your attacks well, and they'll never even get close to hitting you. I ventured over to a small island, collected another sock, and almost got hit by a large blowfish shot from a cannon. On the other side, I was presented with a chance for another spatula. All I had to do was bungee jump to get it, and voila. I cross a large gap and get introduced to another new robot. The Hammer. They have a large metal ham for a hand. Of course, the same principle applies to these guys as the normal robots. Time your attack out and you're good. Further in, we have our first encounter with Goo, the deep ocean's form of water. I can touch it without taking any damage, but if I touch it twice, I die, sending me back to my last checkpoint. There were some more robots, jumping on flowers, and a sock collected. Then I came across my first Duplicatatron. These machines can spit out new robots, so it's always best to destroy them first if you can. Another golden spatula, another new area. Also, here's a clip that I just remember existed of me doing the Krusty Krab pizza song from the year 2017. Enjoy! Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza, yeah, for you and me. It starts out with one of my favorite things about this game, sandboarding, specifically on my tongue, and the guitar riffs they play while it's happening are pretty gosh darn good. I make sure to go on it twice, once for a hidden sock on a different path, and a second time for the sock that I have to really jump for to get. Okay, it's time to save Patrick from the robots. This part can be pretty hard at times, but I pulled it off relatively easily. All I had to do was break the Duplicatatrons on each platform and hit a switch. While it was a little dangerous to move between the platforms, I managed just fine. I saved Patrick, was awarded a spatula, and then got to play as him too. This whole next part is just a tutorial for Patrick and his gimmick, picking up stuff to throw at things. The caves hold little in the way of danger, as long as you keep your distance from the lava balls and watch the spike traps carefully. Towards the end, we got to sandboard some more. This time, it is much more dangerous, featuring fire traps and thunder tikis, which damage you if you hit them. On the other side, I made sure to freeze the goo with a freeze fruit to collect another sock, and this is where I faced my first defeat. You see, when I started this challenge, I had all intentions of playing the classic version of this game over the remake. Why, you might ask? Because the remake's controls feel a little off. For example, in this tutorial, they explain that Patrick can stun robots by belly flopping close to them. What they don't explain is that it doesn't always work. Sometimes it should, but it doesn't. This made me restart more than I care to admit, but after a few tries, I did manage to get it, though just barely. I got another spatula, and it was on to the next horrible moment of this game, another new area, this time with a new robot, the Tartar. This robot kind of scares me, and it's mostly because it has a ranged attack. Thankfully, they do show you where the globs are going to land, so it could be worse, I suppose. The really horrible part was over yonder, and that was talking to Mrs. Puff. There was a spatula to be had, but at what cost? I had to stun these hammers with a belly flop and then throw them at these things. The only problem was that it didn't want to work. I had to have tried this like 10 times. Either I would screw up, or the attack just wouldn't happen. In the end, I was rewarded for my patience with another spatula. I finally changed back to SpongeBob for the climb to the top, facing no trouble whatsoever on the way, which felt nice after what I had just been through. Once at the top, I collected another spatula and got ready for a boss fight, King Jellyfish. This fight could have gone worse, I suppose. I didn't know the exact timing of when I should hit him on the remake, but after a few failed attempts, I did it. I just had to stay out of his way and stay out of the normal jellyfish's way too. Once defeated, I grabbed the jelly and sandboarded my way down, making sure to collect another sock for Patrick, along with a spatula. I jumped over to Squidward, gave him the jelly, and he gave me another spatula. I was at 11 now. The next stop was downtown Bikini Bottom. Immediately upon entry, I was hassled by Mrs. Puff to collect 11 steering wheels for the boats so everyone could evacuate. So I got to work on that right away. More new robots, little robo-dogs. When they attack, they release noxious gas, so I had to make sure I hit them swiftly before they got the chance to do that. Another spatula loomed on my mind. All I had to do was get this cannon to fire sinks at the thunder tikis nearby so I could hit the buttons. Of course, I failed once or twice due to sinks, but got there in time. I collected another sock, then got acquainted with another new gimmick, rolling around in ball form. And once again, another new robot. Glove. These guys move pretty quick once they start spinning, but as long as you can jump and do a ground attack, there's nothing to worry about. More ball rolling, steering wheel collecting, and sock collecting. I eventually got to Sandy's part and opted to skip it for now in favor of the sea needle. Here Mr. Krabs asks us to break all the tikis for a spatula, and it was harder than I first thought. Some of the tikis were, in fact, thunder tikis. I had to make sure I had positioned myself just right or kaboom. The robots didn't help much either. I eventually managed to destroy all of the tikis, and even got Sandy to cheekily help me collect another steering wheel, which I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to have yet. Another spatula down, and it was time for the tutorial with Sandy, which led me to another spatula, and another sock. Now I was on the rooftops, and Larry the Lobster requested my help in replacing his old antenna with a new one. The old one had a spatula next to it, so I was game. I made sure to switch to SpongeBob to collect another quick sock, then continued onward to Sandy. More new robots. Can't remember this one's name, but it throws torpedoes, and they have quite a bit of splash damage. Of course, they also show you where they're going to hit, so as long as you avoid the area, it's no sweat. Further along the roof, I came to a part that was a little bothersome. There was another Duplicatatron, and it was making gloves. I destroyed it, but got absolutely destroyed. For a while, it seemed like this was going to keep happening, but thankfully it did not. I eventually got to the end of the rooftops and got another spatula, switched back to SpongeBob, got another sock, and made my way into the lighthouse. Inside, there was a large-scale fighting room, and every time I destroyed all of the robots on a floor, along with the Duplicatatrons, the floor would break and start a new fight. The first couple of fights were very easy, but it quickly got worse the deeper I went. Gloves, tartars, and torpedoes. Of course, every time I killed one, more would spawn. After a few frustrating attempts, I managed to figure out the pattern of where to fall to be closest to the Duplicatatrons, and that helped significantly. I got the last steering wheel, another spatula, and a sock to boot. Back to Mrs. Puff for the spatula, and I even took a taxi back to a spatula I missed due to a lack of shiny objects. Now it was time for a new level, Goo Lagoon. You guessed it, another new robot. Monsoon. It can create storm clouds and shock you with them. To kill him, I need to jump attack before he can, otherwise I'm toast. I met up with Larry, and he gave me a new mission. I need to hit the sun reflectors in the right order so I can use the beam to destroy the robot that stole everyone's sunscreen, who is located on a tiny island a ways off. Makes perfect sense. I turn all of the reflectors I can and get it to point at the last one, which I conveniently need to be at the end of the level to hit. So I switch to Patrick to collect another sock. Once again as my main sponge, I found myself sought out by Puff Mama. We're having chili tonight. I needed to jump attack all of the kids' balloons so they would fall, which apparently would award me with another spatula from the Puff herself. I hit the few balloons I could right now, and collected another sock in the meantime. It took some advanced jumping over the goo to hit the rest of them, and just like that, I had another spatula, and went to the big sandcastle to collect another sock. The next part required some advanced platforming skills, as I had to evade rising goo, robots, and large beach balls. Luckily, I'm pretty good at this game. I got the spatula and another sock, and then it was on to the next area. The caves held little in the way of danger, and I made it to the spatula without expending any effort. But the real fun part of Goo Lagoon was right around the corner. It was time for the carnival. Of course, I needed Patrick for this, as there would be wanton destruction involved. Mr. Krabs wanted me to clear the robots from the pier, which I dutifully did, though breaking many things in the process. After that, it was my goal to destroy all of the robots in the bumper cars. I stopped to play some Whack-A-Tiki to collect another sock, and made sure to collect the one in the ice rink too. I went on another slide for the fun of it, then finally arrived at the bumper cars. Of course, you slide on ice, making enemies difficult to avoid. I slipped up a few times, pun intended, but it didn't take long to finish. I collected the hidden spatula on the water using freeze fruit, returned to Mr. Krabs for a spatula, and attempted to show this fish who the real boss was. After that, I springboarded my way over to the last reflector platform, switched to SpongeBob, and kissed that robot goodbye. Back to Larry for a spatula, then to the carnival for another pay-to-win spatula, and it was on to the first real boss of the game, which was waiting for me in the Poseidome. Poseidon himself tasks me with fighting a giant robot version of Sandy. Sounds easy, right? No? Well, thankfully most of it is. Just stay out of the range of its attacks, evade when it jumps towards you, and ground attack to pop its robo head off. Rinse and repeat, and we're on to the next phase, where I use Patrick. Same shtick, except there is a new attack to avoid.
Spelling! The old clothesline move!
Easy for now, but it gets much harder. After I chuck the robo head into the down scoreboard a few times, it's back to SpongeBob for the final phase. This was bad. Really bad. The old clothesline move now utilizes both the arms and legs, and unlike the original version of the game, you can't control how high you can jump via analog buttons. In the new version, you jump as high as you can every time. That makes getting in between the arms and legs considerably harder than it needed to be. It had to be a perfect timed double jump, in which I jumped the second time at a low point in the first jump. It was not easy. At all. It took about 20 minutes of trying until I could almost always pull it off, and even then. When it was finally over, I begrudgingly took my spatula and my new power, the Bubble Bowl, and went to the new area of Bikini Bottom that had just opened. I got the easy spatulas out of the way first, like the one on top of Shady Shoals, and the one I get for clearing Sandy's tree dome of robots. Now, I had a choice to make. Where would I go first? Rock Bottom, or the Mermalair? I chose Mermalair since Rock Bottom can be a little more difficult. Inside of the Mermalair, I was tasked to get to the Mermalair computer system by Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. We get introduced to some of the mainstays in the Mermalair, like the disco floor and the shocking electrodes. We also meet a new enemy, one that I dreaded a little bit. Ruff. These cowboys have wooden pistols and a doghouse full of exploding robo-dogs. He also takes 3 hits to kill. They very much expect you to bubble bowl them to death, but I like to live dangerously. If you can avoid the dogs long enough, you can keep up with Ruff, who moves every time you hit him. Rinse and repeat, and you're good for the most part. The rest of the way to the top has us using Bubble Bowl to proceed, and voila, another spatula. Of course, that's not where the Merma computer resides. It's at the top of the next area. This place is much more difficult due to the shocking electrodes and torpedoes, whose splash damage persists long after the torpedo actually hits. I had to Bubble Bowl a couple of buttons to get the jumping walls up, and also made sure to collect another sock at the end of the slide. Before I made my way to the Merma computer, I switched to Patrick to help Mermaid Man fix the TV, which consisted of me throwing fruit at buttons with various obstacles to overcome. I thought it would be harder, but I got it in one go, and was awarded a spatula. That's 30 now. Back to the sponge, and I scaled the wall to finally talk to the Merma computer. It told me I needed to hit the 4 buttons scattered around the lair, and then come back here and push the final one. I won't lie, I never ended up doing that because I forgot where the last button was, and I didn't really care that much about finding it, even though it leads to a pretty cool boss fight. Of course, I still went deeper into the Mermalair prior to me giving up, so let's go. The tunnels were home to many robots, and of course, the wonderful disco floor. You can step in the white tiles no problem, but the red ones damage you, and the yellow ones indicate that a tile is about to turn red. The best strategy is to keep moving and jumping, which I assume is why they call them disco floors. Considering I've been playing this game since I was a very little kid, I didn't struggle in the slightest here and made it to the end for my beloved gold utensil. The next area is a little different. It's pretty much a Rube Goldberg machine, except you have to do freaking everything to keep it rolling. I tried many times, but always choked right at the end where you have to move the platform via shifting your weight. I just couldn't do it. Actually, this is always one of those spatulas that gives me trouble when I try to 100% this game, so I moved on for greener pastures. Well, darker pastures actually. Rock Bottom, one of my favorite places. It was pretty spooky when I was a kid, and not much has changed since then. The only difference is the fact that I'm spooked by the robots now instead of the surroundings. New area, new robot. Sleepy time. Not hard to kill, but painfully slow. You have to sneak close to it and strike. You can't use the Bubble Bowl. The problem is that other robots can be in the mix sometimes, and that's not good for me. Puff Mom is back and wants us to collect the museum's missing artwork. I'm assuming for her to sell on the black market. We also get to experience the wonderful candy machine scene, which brings back so many good memories. Anyway, the whole gimmick of Rock Bottom is sneaking. You have to sneak on these platforms or they fall, and robots that need to be snuck past lest they attack. Of course, I am a rebel and follow no one's rules. I just jump on the platforms fast enough that I can get to the next one without falling. Bubble Buddy informs us that we need to get to the museum, and that couldn't be easy, could it? There was a lot of button pressing. Wandering, button pressing. Rolling, did I mention button pressing? With everything pressed, I could switch to Sandy and lasso my way across to the museum. All of that button pressing for a 30-second trip, not even. I made sure to switch back to SpongeBob before entering and was greeted by Barnacle Boy, who was supposed to be having many doctor's appointments today, according to him just 30 minutes ago in the Lair. I had to get to the other side of the museum, and to do that I would have to shut down the security system. That involved even more button pressing and electricity avoiding, though the latter I seemed to not be so good at doing. Once on ground level, I picked up another sock and sneak attacked some more robots. The rest of the security system needed to be turned off via buttons, of course, but as soon as I pressed one, a normal robot spawned right next to me and thwacked me real good. I was ready for him next time and got the poop on him.
And they get the poop on the robot.
Now it was time for the upper floors of the museum, which naturally were littered with thunder tikis. Jumping from light to light was a pain in the butt, and I eventually left the museum to switch to Sandy. She could lasso fly right to each light with ease, which netted me a sock, a wonderful glimpse at Bold and Brash, a lost painting, and of course another spatula for the collection. Outside, in the trenches of advanced darkness, I took a slide down to the middle of the map, pressed a lot of buttons, and switched to Sandy for some more lasso swinging. I had to turn off these 3 lasers for a spatula, which was easy. I didn't collect said spatula yet in favor of wandering around to find a different one first. After that, I returned to Plankton, the quest giver of the lasers, and received his spatula. I switched back to SpongeBob so I could make it to the exit, which was painful to say the least. This is one of those times where they mix sleepy time in with other robots, and I failed way more than I wanted to, but in the end, I was awarded a spatula for my efforts. Of course, there was another spatula to get here in the form of a slide. I actually failed this, not because I took damage, but because I didn't get to it in time. One more try took care of that problem, and I was ready to return to the beginning of the level. Of course, I was still missing a spatula and looked around until I found it, hiding out of the way on a small island that only Sandy could get to. Back to Mrs. Puff with the paintings, and I was finally done with Rock Bottom. Now it was time for Sand Mountain, my favorite area of the game. Sadly, I didn't get to spend much time here. The sandboarding slopes required money to unlock, and I wasn't making that many because I was constantly loading my saves back every time I took damage instead of dying and keeping what shiny objects I collected. I did manage to collect the one spatula I could here with Sandy, but alas, I would have to come back later. It was time for another boss fight. I unlocked the way to the industrial park and got ready. A cutscene plays where Squidward runs from RoboPatrick and then gets frozen. Naturally, it was up to Sandy and I to rescue him. I'm gonna say it now, I did this fight in one try, which really surprised me. They either changed the robot's AI, or I got incredibly lucky, but we'll get to that in a minute. First phase, I have to avoid RoboPatrick spitting and flinging green goo at me. Once he's done, he gets dizzy, and I can whack him in the back, rinse and repeat 2 more times, and another cutscene plays. This time, SpongeBob gets frozen, and Sandy has to help. Same thing as before, except I have to swing to drop boxes in the pit of goo so I can run up and hit RoboPatrick. He also does this attack, which is easily avoided by also jumping. In the next cutscene, SpongeBob and Squidward are freed, and it's time for the final phase. There was a scary part where I got frozen, but he missed me with the green goo, and being frozen thankfully doesn't damage you. Here's where I think I got lucky. In the original version after the spin attack, it would seem like RoboPatrick would always land with his back facing somewhere different, which would force you to sprint across the conveyors to line up a shot. In this version, his back landed towards me all 3 times, making it just too easy. I won and was awarded a spatula and a new area of Bikini Bottom to explore. The first stop was in the chum bucket to collect a very hidden wall jump spatula, then I was into the Krusty Krab to defeat all of the robots for another spatula. After that, I got to mess around with my new technique, the bubble torpedo, and was able to jump up to the roof of the chum bucket for, you guessed it, another spatula. I also made sure to go back to downtown Bikini Bottom for a spatula I could only get with the bubble torpedo. Now it was time to go to SpongeBob's Dreams, a new level of course. The best part here is SpongeBob with a mustache. The other good part is that every dream bubble I visit has a spatula within. Of course, with a new level comes a new enemy. I can't remember the name of this one either, but it has a shield, spits oil, and has area damage. Oh boy. I got hit of course, and decided to take it out from afar via torpedo. Once I was back across, I snagged the golden spatula with the help of a large beach ball and continued on my way to Sandy's dream. We switched to Sandy automatically and talked to Larry about the dream. To get the spatula, I would have to sandboard, all while viewing this massive, absolutely Texas-sized dream. I didn't have any problems with taking damage here, thankfully. My problem was that I kept falling off of the slide. I still got to the end and had a blast doing so. I had to pay 1,000 shiny objects to get to Squidward's dream, and made sure to get the spatula on top of his house, too. I love this part of the game so freaking much. It pays a wonderful homage to old Squiddy Boy. I have to jump across musical notes to get to the end. Once again, I didn't take any damage, but I sure as hell fell an awful lot. When I was finally done, I hopped aboard Squidward's giant nose for my reward. We were now at 50 spatulas. From there, I left to pay another 1,000 shiny objects to go to Mr. Krabs' dream. This was definitely the hardest part of the challenge, and it's not even a boss fight. It is once again what I like to call a kill room. There were a lot of robots here, and I needed to kill a certain amount of each type so the Krabby Patty platforms would lower themselves. From there, I could break the Duplicatatrons and cease some of the robot production. The only problem? There were far too many enemies, especially ones that could do damage from range. Try, and try again. I would either get hit with oil or flames from this new type of robot. Really, what worked in the end was me just playing it enough times to get the spawn patterns etched into my memory. Spatula acquired, along with a sock. Another 1,000 shiny objects to go to Patrick's Dream, which was a very easy spatula to acquire. I also spent 15 minutes walking away into the void with the entry at my back. Right outside on an island close by was the last spatula I would be collecting in this level, and it was time for a new one. Kelp Forest is... well, it's okay, I suppose. I never really have too much fun here or in the Flying Dutchman's graveyard, but I wanted to cover all of the game a bit, so here we are. After a bit of wandering, I come across Puff Mama. She lost her campers and needed me to find them, of course. First, I made it to the end of the area for an easy spatula, then I started meandering around, pushing buttons to raise leaf platforms and occasionally switching to Patrick. In the end, I found 3 of the 6 campers and called it a day, by moving into the next area. This next part is really annoying. I have to put 3 stone tikis on these switches. The only problem is that 2 of them are scattered around the area, an area filled with hostile robots and goo galore. Did I also mention that if I die or load a checkpoint, that the stones are returned to their original places? Oh yeah, this was just heaps of fun. Much pain, suffering, and agony later, I managed to get them all where they needed to be. Only for the game to break on me and not let me throw the last tiki on the switch properly. You know what that means. Once more, with fear. Of course, my troubles were worth it, I guess, as I got another spatula. Hooray. Next area has me switching between SpongeBob and Patrick constantly so I can look for Barnacle Boy's missing power crystals. This part wasn't hard, it just took a lot of time. Run over here, toss a tiki. Run over there, shoot a button with a torpedo. I did find all of the crystals and the last camper, so that's a bonus, I suppose. The last task in the Kelp Forest was to beat Mermaid Man's time down the vine slide. No danger here, just a lot of sharp corners for me to fall off. Collect the spatula, repeat with Mrs. Puff, and we're out of here. Next stop, Sand Mountain? Yeah, I went back because I had enough shiny objects to open a slope. Each slope has 2 spatulas, one for getting to the bottom and one for beating a time trial. I opted for the easy slope for now and did it in one fell swoop, awarding me 2 new spatulas. After that, it was time for the dreaded Flying Dutchman's graveyard. Immediately, we are harassed by the level's namesake and tasked with clearing his boat of robots. Oh, and to blow up the robot's boat while I'm at it. This beginning area is pretty much one big puzzle involving sliding jump walls into the correct spots so I can advance. Nothing too special, and I make it to the top with ease. The next area has a lot of platforming in it, with some pretty crazy wall jumps to boot. The most annoying part was this wall jump that constantly moves, so you have to slow down your momentum to actually make it to the top. Of course, it paid off, and we were now only 10 spatulas away from the final fight. Next area, and we're on the Dutchman's boat. Here I have to deactivate all of the power generators on the robot ship and activate all of the cannons on the Dutchman's. This was made harder than it needed to be by the robots, but I went in with Sandy to make it a little easier. After that, I switched back to SpongeBob to activate the majority of the cannons, then switched back to Sandy for both another spatula and to activate the last cannon, which in turn gave me another spatula. I had completely forgotten that I had to fight the Flying Dutchman. Shows how often I actually do this part of the game. It's a pretty straightforward fight. Dodge his attacks, then lasso his tail. Of course, during that he emits ghostly fire, so that caught me off guard. But the next time I won. It really was as simple as that. One more spatula for the collection. Back to Sand Mountain where I unlocked another slope. This was actually quite a bit harder than I anticipated it would be. There was an abundance of spikes and thunder tikis vying to get in my way, and most of the time I failed right at the end too. But after I took the wrong path enough, the right one revealed itself to me, and I was 2 spatulas richer because of it. I went back to Sand Mountain and farmed enough shiny objects to open the last slope and went in. This was a long one, so messing up was frustrating. Thankfully, I only did so twice. This was it. I had enough golden spatulas to open the chum bucket doors and fight the last boss. Robo SpongeBob, who was being controlled by Roboplankton. Imagine that. This was definitely the hardest boss fight by far. Its attacks were incredibly well coordinated, but this side chop attack kept throwing me off big time. Every time I did one and I was able to dodge it, it gave me the opening to torpedo one of the green buttons on its body. After 3 hits, Roboplankton comes out to play. I have to dodge his attacks, then shoot him down with a torpedo. Next phase adds a new move, the Karate Chop. This was easily avoided, and the only thing that was holding me back from the last phase was the gosh darn side chop. Getting the timing down was not working out very well for me, but I managed to squeak into the 3rd phase. There was a new attack where it would scream karate at you, and if you were on a platform where part of the word hit, you took damage. Thankfully, it was easy to dodge, but that side chop kept coming back to haunt me. Eventually, through sheer willpower, I managed to defeat Robo SpongeBob and had to go inside of its head to destroy it once and for all. This was a pretty standard platforming room. I jump to one of the platforms, kill the enemies on it, have a fight with Roboplankton and torpedo him, then break the fuse, which spawns in a new jump pad to take me to the next platform. Rinse and repeat until the final couple of fuses. Now I was on very, very small platforms, and Roboplankton didn't go away after I torpedoed him. In the small amount of time I had after I did, I had to launch another torpedo into whatever hole was nearby and break the fuse. If I didn't break the fuse, I was fairly certain that Roboplankton would attack me immediately, but I never got the chance to find out. Every torpedo struck its home without problem, and before I knew it I was watching the closing cutscene, and I beat SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom without taking any damage. This was mostly an excuse for me to play this game, since I haven't played it in a while. I didn't expect to have as much fun as I did, or for it to be as easy. Definitely try this out the next time you play, it's damn good fun. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like and subscribe, as that helps me out a lot. Also, check out some of my other challenges. If you like this one, I'm sure you'll like those too. Come visit the Discord or Patreon, link in the description. Thanks to my patrons, Dr. Maritimus, Braden Watson, and Anonymous, y'all are the best. Thanks to 6 weirdly out-of-the-loop rats in a trench coat for helping me write this script. How is it possible that you've never seen a single episode of SpongeBob? And until next time, stay safe out there, and peace out.